Welcome to our latest webinar from Give A Grad A Go. In today's session, we're going to be exploring how to ace a video interview whilst job hunting in a remote workplace. Give A Grad A Go are proudly sponsoring Anthony Nolan, who is saving the lives of people with blood cancer. For more information about how you can join the register to donate your stem cells and other ways that you can help, please visit www.anthonynolan.org. Before we get started, make sure you subscribe to our channel. If you're on YouTube, click the alert notification button, and if you like the video, please click like and share.
I'm Henry. I work in the corporate partnerships team at Anthony Nolan, and we're really excited today to have the headline sponsor from the Marrow National Conference, Give A Grad A Go. So we've got Katie and Will from Give A Grad A Go, and they are the UK's leading recruitment, jobs and early career talent community, and they place thousands of graduates in companies across the UK in a range of positions, a range of companies. And they are really excited to be here, and also would love to hear from you about your plans for your first steps out of university. So do follow them on social, LinkedIn, Instagram, and on their website giveagradago.com to see how they can help you. And I'm going to hand over to Katie for the session. So yeah, take it away, guys.
Thanks very much, Henry, for the introduction. Hi everyone, my name's Katie. So I've been working at Give A Grad A Go for about 6 months now. I'm the community and partnerships exec. What that means is that I'm based in the marketing team and I work a lot with our partners. So of course, I'm quite involved with Anthony Nolan and the sponsorship. It's really great getting a range of things up and running, especially for graduates. So really looking forward to getting involved with sessions like this one where we can actually help. As Henry mentioned, now everything's social distance, like even for the Marrowers at university, we decided to focus this session on virtual interview tips. So we're really lucky to have Will with us today. He's worked at Give A Grad A Go for 3 years. He's our key account manager, which is basically an expert in our terms of recruiting. So he's going to be going through all the tips and give you the insider information that I might not know as much about. Welcome very much to this, actually one of our first webinars on this topic. So thanks so much for joining in. So at Give A Grad A Go, we basically focus on getting people into their dream role. One thing that I personally didn't know when I started using a recruitment company, I didn't know how much recruiters actually help you with your CV and help you with your interview tips. My little story with Give A Grad A Go actually is I came out of university, I worked for a bit, and then I was looking for a job through Give A Grad A Go. Unfortunately, I didn't get that role, but then they actually said, hey, we'll hire you. So I started working with Give A Grad A Go, and it's been amazing since then. And back then, that was pre-COVID, so of course, it was all in the office, but I think this will hopefully give you guys a lot of insight on how to master and crack those virtual interview tips, which are slightly different to what we might all be used to. So I'll just recap again just who quickly we are. So at Give A Grad A Go, if you sign up with us to look for your new role, we help you prepare your application. We offer graduate recruitment across not just fresh graduates and those coming out of university, but also for apprenticeships, internships, rolling contracts, and for people in their early careers. So even if you're looking for your first, second or third job, we'll still be there to help connect you to opportunities and employers. And for the people that we're recruiting, it's a completely free service our employers pay to have you. So I'll let Will take the reins a bit more on this one. This is kind of a slight overview of a few 5 main things that we would say to look out for in your interviews. But just quickly before we go on to that, I'll let Will show you a bit more about CV tips.
This is actually just a CV from one of my colleagues called Tony, who's been working at Give A Grad A Go, and I just wanted to kind of give an example CV of what to me is just a great CV. It'll capture the attention, it's clear, it's concise, and it's well formatted, other than this random line across the bottom here, so just ignore that. I think that was just from when I used a software to remove his name. But some things that stand out that I think are really key when you're building a graduate CV is is going to be a profile to articulate about your background, why you're interested in a certain sector, in a certain field, and really just giving some of the key characteristics about yourself that can be related to the job or industry that you're working for. So, for example, Tony has come from a recruitment background. He's working with clients and customers, so he wants to explain that he's personable, he is articulate and confident, because those are the key skills that you're looking for in a client-facing role where you're dealing with different individuals on a daily basis. So in his sort of short profile, he's talked about his academic strength, so the university he's studied at, the grade that he's achieved and the degree that he studied, that he enjoys working in a sort of target-driven sales-based role, and then reaffirms his sort of level of achievement through sort of the academic principles. So there you can sort of read that and know that he's going to be looking for a client-facing, semi sort of soft sales, KPI-driven role, and that he'd be well suited to that type of environment. Now, if you're looking for marketing, you can word it differently. You can explain about your sort of passion for writing content, whatever degree you have completed, you can kind of turn it around to focus on that. If you're more analytical, if you study data science, it's just all about tweaking the keywords that an employer might be looking for and being able to describe them in a personal profile to really highlight your attributes. So for me, that's a really strong factor for any role. The best thing that you can do as well when you're applying to different roles is you can just make minor tweaks to this section. You can add in different phrases, different keywords, different industries, whether you're being, let's say you're a data analyst, you studied mathematics at university, you might be applying for both investment banking, you might also be applying for the media sector, but you don't want to send the same CV to both of those industries because they'll be looking for different things. So you can make minor tweaks and really put yourself out there and sell yourself better. Another really great thing, I always advise this for sort of graduates, is put your academics towards the top of your CV. It's going to be something you want to showcase. So your university, the dates that you've studied there, the degree itself, and your achievement, as well as some of the key sort of modules that you've studied. Nobody wants to read a full sort of blurb of every single module, every single area that you've looked at, but key ones that are related to the sector you're going into, the ones that you did the best in, are always going to be a positive factor. Now, A-levels, really important to have on there as well. It's something that a lot of employers will look at. It's quite rare nowadays that employers will look at your GCSEs, so I wouldn't worry too much about that. Onto the experience, so your most recent role along with the dates, some information about potentially who the company are, your key responsibilities, the roles you carried out, what your functions were. And one thing, I don't know if it's mentioned in this, that I know in my next CV I'd have is my key achievements. What I did in my role and what I actually managed to achieve. So the fact that, for myself, I've overachieved on every sales target that I've been set. I've broke a few previous records on getting promotions. They've been beaten now, sadly. But, those are the key things that I'm going to want to highlight to employers to really show the strength of my background and why they should look to hire me over someone else. The worst thing I think you can do when it comes to a CV is just put a job specification in reverse. When you're looking at a job and it says the key requirements and what you're looking to do, and it has a job description, some CVs read as if they've just copy and pasted the same job that they applied to 2 years later and just put it in their CV. That doesn't help me as a recruiter or as a hiring manager get to understand you and what you were doing within that role. So you really want to try and tell people about your daily tasks, your key achievements. Did you improve a process? What value did you add to the company beyond just explaining to me what the job is? Because if I look at the recruitment consultant role, I've done that. I know what the job is. So I want to be I want to be given more value. It's all about adding more value into a process and telling us what you've been doing. Now, always show your CV in chronological order, your most recent job at the start, and then going down, so we can see that previous to working at Give A Grad A Go, he also worked at another recruitment agency. He was a brand ambassador previously, and he also did sort of English teaching abroad. At the bottom, we can see that Tony was once a resident DJ. he's done a bit of blog writing, a bit of radio presented, so he can get a bit of a flavour for his interests, his achievements, what he's been up to outside of the academic side. So it's all about giving sort of an overview of who you are, what you're about, and the type of things you've been up to. I mean, on my CV, it says that I'm a big Land Rover fanatic. It's a passion of mine to go off-roading. It's a bit of an odd one, but at the same time, it shows people who I am. Some people have sports, but it's all about just telling people more about who you are. And a lot of the time, it will allow you to strike up a conversation during an interview. So I'm going to pass the presentation back over to Katie now, if I can do this. There we go.
Yeah, I have definitely been guilty in the past of copy and pasting certain words from job specs and putting them straight on my CV. Like, this is like the exact kind of thing that I think recruiters just come in so handy. Like, you just don't know, and obviously you guys are the absolute experts. So
cool. Do you want to take over the screen sharing again if it lets you? I think I'll set you as the host.
Let's have a look. So right, let's have a look. I'll try and share mine.
So yeah, I'd say to all of you on the call, this is the main thing that you'll probably come into contact with on any sort of video interview. It's the technical limits of humans using technology. Human error comes up all the time, and people now, they're understanding their patients. So as long as you've done sort of, and we'll come on to this, some of the background stuff, which you'll see here, they understand that not everything will go smoothly, but it's all about how you adapt and allow the process to continue. So the best things that you can do really, oh, actually, can we go back one? Because I think there are a few other bits that we were going to mention on the previous slide before we jump her. Yeah, actually, I just want to double check that we've covered all this. So yeah, when it comes to sort of CV tips and preparing for an interview in general, doing your research, making sure you're fully aware of the company that you're applying to, the industry they work in, the job, the function. The more research you do, the better you're equipped to succeed within an interview. And I think having sort of detailed, comprehensive notes is useful. Obviously, it's going to show off your skills if you're well presented. There's nothing more that creates a stronger impression than being able to show someone that you're knowledgeable about the company and about the subject you're talking about. But more so, it's looking at it beyond the surface level. Anyone can regurgitate information off a website, but if you've then gone deeper than that, you've looked at their blogs, you've read their articles, you've looked at their LinkedIn, the posts that they produce, and you've been able to get a firm understanding of what they do beyond, no offense, Katie, the marketing, information and BS that's just a layer of winning business. That's really when you get to understand what a company does. So it's really important that you dig deep and that you get a firm understanding, that you stay informed. Looking at their blogs, their LinkedIn, their social media is going to be really important to see if they've had any updates. There are so many candidates that have gone into interviews. I've advised them to look at their blog, their LinkedIn. The company's recently put out a major update. Candidates have just completely missed it and been blindsided. There's only so much advice that I can give you. It's all about you then following through for that. And talking of LinkedIn, a great thing that you can do is connect with the hiring manager, connect with the recruiters, and connect with company officials, or even just view their profiles on LinkedIn. LinkedIn is an absolute goldmine for information. You can find out where someone has studied, what they've done in their job previously, and it's just really a fantastic tool to get to know the people that you're speaking to. I've just popped up, Josh has just sent a message, how do you find out who the recruitment manager is? It's not always easy. I know for myself, I will always tell my candidates who they're going to be interviewing with. I'll stick a link in the email, the preparation email, saying, look, you're going to be interviewing with Jenny from Best Buy Beds. I don't know why I said that, but that's the individual. She's done X, Y, Z in her career. Look at her LinkedIn, get to know who she is. Sometimes it turns out you went to the same university as them, or you both studied politics at university. It's amazing the type of things that you can find out that can benefit you. Don't be afraid to ask if you're going and interviewing with a company directly. Whilst you're conversing with the hiring manager or the HR team, if it's a direct process rather than for a recruiter, just ask them, who am I going to be interviewing with? Are you able to let me know their name? There's no reason really why they wouldn't want you to know who you're going to be meeting with, because you're going to find out in 12, 24 hours anyway. So feel free to ask in a polite manner. You can do this as well about asking what the interview process is going to be, so you understand what the steps are and also what the format of the interview is going to be, and loosely the content. Asking them the content of an interview is always difficult because they don't always want to give too much away. But at the same time, it's useful for you to know kind of what you're going to be stepping into, so you can prepare, whether it's just going to be an informal chat getting to know you, whether there's going to be technical questions that you need to prepare for. So a lot of the time, hiring managers, recruiters, I know recruiters especially, we're going to give you as much information as we can, because it's mutually beneficial. The better you do in an interview, the better we do in our job. So we're going to try and prepare you as best as possible.
Cool, thank you. So should we start with the next top tip? So we kind of set out this presentation. So we've got our 6 number 1 top tips for video interview. We'll go through it a bit more. So an obvious first one is prepare your interview video software and the technology. This is something that Will and I discussed earlier. What kind of software would you normally use? I would say, my opinion, I'm sure we'll go on more about this in a second, but it's quite often up to the employer. So always leave it up to them, and of course test it as well. But yeah, Will, I'll let you carry on.
Yeah, definitely, Katie. I mean, the employer will set kind of the terms of how they're looking to engage with you. So they'll tell you whether it's going to be a Google Hangouts, a Teams, a Zoom call, Skype, WhatsApp video, FaceTime. Everyone will have a preferred methodology of what works best for them and what they think will work best for their setup. Some employers, some of our clients are huge telecom industry. They have their own specific software that they'll use. Now, what this means is that in a landscape of ever-changing sort of digital softwares, you need to make sure that you know that the specific software that you're using is going to work for you, and that your laptop isn't going to block it, and that you're not going to have issues when it comes to the interview. So before myself and Katie hopped on this webinar, we tested out Zoom, tested out the screen sharing. We made sure everything was going to work for us. So that's something that I highly advise you try and do to the best of your ability. Not every platform will allow you to test it before the call starts, but a lot of them will give you an option to test the audio, to test the camera. You can also do this using your own webcam camera on your laptop or on your phone. So for instance, before I usually start a client video call, I'll usually go onto my webcam, I'll check my audio is working, I'll check that the room looks bright, that it's clear, that they can see me, they can hear me. And that just makes sure, to the best of my ability, that the call's going to go through. I usually give my clients, my candidates' mobile number as well, just in case there is an issue, so they can contact them. But a recruiter would usually be on hand if there was an issue, that you can just give them a bell and say, look, this isn't working. After about 3 or 4 minutes of having issues, we usually advise you to contact the hiring manager, the recruiter, drop them an email or a call if possible, to say that you're having these issues. In terms of other bits, some softwares you'll need to download in advance. If you're using your mobile phone, most of the time you have to download the application in advance of the interview. If it hits 11 and you're about to jump on a Zoom call and you haven't downloaded Zoom, it's going to be problematic, because they're going to be waiting for you to download, set up an account. So make sure that you're ready, you've tested out the application, you've looked online to see what the process is for setting up and for you joining an interview. And also make sure that your phone's on silent, do not disturb, you're in a quiet place. Usernames, professional usernames are key. I'm sure everyone had sort of quizzes at the start of lockdown. They were the big thing. Everyone had ridiculous names, and it was great fun to a degree. They got a bit tiresome after a while, but make sure that you have the appropriate name for the interview that you're going into. I mean, my name on here is Will Spilsbury. My email address from when I was like 12 years old was Willie Spilly because my name's Will Spilsbury. Now,
Katie the Greaty.
there you go. Now, if I use that on a job application or on a CV, people are just going to think, what the hell is this guy doing? That's completely inappropriate. If I have that as my username on Skype, which actually my old Skype ID probably was something similar to that. So make sure that you have an appropriate name, just your actual name, so that people can see that professional persona. You know, practice a test call out with a friend, family, make sure everyone is aware that you're about to hop onto this call. You know, I ran around the house before telling my girlfriend, her mum, everyone, look, don't do any DIY, don't come up looking to collect the laundry. I'm going to be doing quite an important call to hopefully help some people with their career. Do not disturb me. So it's really important because I'm sure we've all seen the BBC Dad a few years ago on BBC News where the child comes running into the room and then the mum snatches and drags him out. That's the last thing that you want to happen on a video interview, because it just doesn't look too professional. However, within that, there is a remit of understanding now. The world has completely changed. People do understand that there are technical issues. Not everyone has a quiet place. Not everyone has a spare bedroom to use as an office. People are restricted. So there is an element of understanding. But at the same time, you need to do as much as you can to mitigate against those issues arising, to ensure that it is a smooth process. Testing your Wi-Fi. If you're like me and you have Virgin as your Wi-Fi provider, you're probably going to want to test your Wi-Fi before every call because it's unreliable. And yeah, I'm not going to go into detail, but they're annoying. So check your Wi-Fi. If you don't have good Wi-Fi at home, you could, if you have enough mobile data, use your phone as a hotspot. That's what I regularly do for important things because I know my Wi-Fi can be unreliable. Find an environment, where you can go that has decent connection, that is still quiet. If you can go and visit someone within your bubble that has an internet connection that's stronger that you can use, feel free to do that. I think the main thing is obviously adhering to government guidelines and all the stuff that we have no clue about because Boris isn't very clear. And then just making sure that you're set up in the best way to sort of conduct a video interview in a sort of clear, concise manner with reliable internet.
Cool. So on to the next one. This is my favourite one. Will, I think you might be about to show us. So obviously the best one is hide the washing. Will and I, when we were speaking earlier, we were saying, what's the weirdest thing that you've had sort of going on in the background? And I said, well, I've actually got some guinea pigs that live in this room. And then Will said, well, I've got some chinchillas. So you never know, but you just need to keep them out of sight.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that's a difficult one. My chinchillas, they're not tame animals like a guinea pig, a cat or a dog. If they start doing stuff in their sort of big cage, I can't stop if they start, rattling around, jumping on things. But what I will do is I'll instantly make the person I'm on a call aware of that and just say, look, I'm really sorry. Obviously, I have limited space. I'm at home. Please apologize. Half the time, they just want to see them because they're cute and fluffy, but the other time it's like, no, don't worry, we'll just crack on. I know Katie's guinea pigs are a pride and joy, so she'll relish any opportunity to show them off. I'm not going to do because it's highly unprofessional, but when it comes to kind of like finding the setting for your video interview, I'm sure you'll be able to see from the 3 different video screens on here at the moment, if you've got your Zoom call to set up to show you all 3 of us. I'm obviously in a sort of an attic conversion bedroom. I've tried my best to make it as professionally set as possible. I made the bed this morning. I've cleared away all the laundry. Interestingly, the main thing I've done actually, if you look, is just ensure that it's not on the floor. Now, if I do this, you can see that there's a pile of laundry here. There's a bag on the floor there ready to go to the charity shop. The room isn't actually spotless. I've just tried to ensure that you can't see it in the camera shot. Lighting, really important. I'm sat in front of the window, but one thing I try and make sure is not only does it look like natural light, but that you can see my face clearly. There's nothing worse, and I'm sure everyone's done this when they're trying to take the perfect selfie, than when your face is just a big white blur. You can't see anything because the lighting's wrong. Make sure that people can see you clearly, that your like your shoulders, basically like a passport photo shot is visible. That's kind of like the key thing that you want to show. It's the most professional kind of headshot, and it tends to work best. So obviously, yeah, make sure that your room's clear, nothing unprofessional is there. If you're a university student in your bedroom, you know, if you have certain posters, move them. I had a big poster of William Shakespeare that said Big Willie. I took that down for all of my interviews when I was at uni, because it was just not the type of thing that a hiring manager wants to see. Bright and clear, make sure you have good natural light, good backing, you know, make sure people can see you clearly as possible. Really key, test out your look. You know, open up your webcam, your camera before you start, whether it's on your phone or your laptop. Place your laptop or phone in the position that you want it to stay, so trying to get sort of a headshot, and look at what it looks like, because that's what the people on the other end will see. So you want to make sure that it's as clear as possible, it's neutral, there's nothing too crazy going on in the background. You know, if you're, you know, have a road behind you with constant traffic moving, shut the curtains to the best of your ability, close your windows so there's not too much background noise. Cool.
Sorry, I moved it forward then by accident. I didn't mean to cut you off so quickly.
Oh, that's all right.
Is that okay to move forward? Anyway?
Yeah, no, that's perfect.
Right,
I think actually, interestingly, Katie, if you're happy to show it, your makeshift kind of like desk, I think would be quite useful for people to see, to kind of like get a feel for what you can do to set up the perfect kind of like spot for a camera.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll show you guys. So where I'm living at the moment, I'm in London in my flat with my 2 housemates. Unfortunately, I've got the smaller room, which means that I don't have a desk in there. So I usually work in the living room, obviously where the sofa would be. But today I wanted to have like plain background when talking to you guys. So I actually have a little makeshift art coffee table, and then a box which is usually filled with all sorts of random things like old PlayStation controllers and our Nintendo DS, which we don't play. So yeah, and then as you can see here, it looks a bit more professional. As Will mentioned earlier, it's bright and clear, the light shining in the right position, so I hope that my face isn't too smudgy. And yeah, I obviously tested this out beforehand. Also, as Will mentioned, I'm very keen to show everyone my lovely guinea pigs are there as well, but hopefully they'll be quiet for the rest of this webinar. So if you are thinking, oh, I'm at home, I don't have that much room, I don't know what to do, you can just make it up randomly. And I hope that it wasn't too obvious that I'm on my makeshift desk before I showed you guys. And shall I move on to the next slide?
Yeah, go for it.
Sounds good. So, and then our top tip number 3, and again, this sort of slightly follows on from the location of where you are for the interview. You can have stuff in the background. Will and I were saying earlier, obviously it's so tempting to have the trackies underneath, but you know, if I was wearing trackies and then, for example, then just showed you guys around the room, you might think, what on earth? That's weird, and you don't want to be doing that in an interview. So yeah, definitely dress how you would do normally, and I'll let Will share a bit more on that topic.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, and this is the thing, as you're probably aware, every single company will have a different dress code. Some will be casual, smart casual, some will be business casual, some will be business attire. Now, what do those actually mean? So hard to define. I know that on our website, if you look at the blogs, we have things that sort of tribute dress code, what you should wear for certain interviews. It's all about dressing for the audience that you're looking to speak to. So for example, I'm speaking to a group of students, university graduates. I like to think that I still dress like a graduate, you know, just like a normal person basically, because I don't have to wear smart stuff for work. I can wear whatever I want. So I'm just here sat in a white t-shirt. I actually did go a little bit above and beyond, put on a Ralph Lauren one to try and impress you all. But, you know, for me, it's about dressing to make you guys feel comfortable, to make my target audience mimic sort of the way I'm looking to portray myself to them. So I'm very much just in, you know, blue jeans, white t-shirt, because I know I'm speaking to the appropriate people. Now, if I happen to have a video interview with KPMG or a client call with a bank or an investment company, and I know that they're hedge fund managers and that they all wear suits with ties and they're, you know, city slickers, I'm going to dress accordingly. I'll grab a suit from my cupboard. I'll hope it still fits after lockdown, and I will dress to impress. Now, whether it's just the top half that's wearing the full suit, I would, I'd probably just wear a sort of suit jacket, but at the same time, sometimes depending what you're wearing, it actually gives you an added layer of confidence, and you can project yourself in a better manner. I'm sure you've all found this. If you're wearing something, fancy, if you're going out for dinner, you feel more confident and more happy, and that can be projected via an interview. Now, if you're interviewing with a tech startup in East London, chances are you're going to be wearing sort of t-shirt, casual jumper and jeans. What we'd always advise doing is trying to research what the company wears, have a look at them on Google, have a look at their website. Have they got any photos of their staff? I know that, Give a Grad A Go, we have a really strong brand presence on social media. And if someone wanted to look at what we wear in the office, they could just look at social media and they'd be able to see pictures of all of our staff, at work doing the odd thing. And they'd know exactly that you can wear pretty much anything you want, and it's fine. But most people then, when they're coming to interview, let's say if a male's coming to interview, they'd probably wear a smart casual shirt, black jeans, and trainers, just because that gives sort of the semi-professional feel. Second round interview, they might come wearing something a little bit more casual because they've already then got a feel for the company. But it's always worth overdressing rather than underdressing, because nobody's going to give you a funny look if you come overdressed. But if you, turn up to an investment banking firm in, trainers and shorts, they're going to look at you a bit funny. So make sure you do your due diligence, ask the hiring manager, ask the recruiter what the dress code is, and then dress accordingly, same as in a video interview. What you'll often find is that, video interviews, people do tend to dress a bit more casually because they're at home. But that doesn't mean you should be doing that when you're trying to make your first impression. If I'm speaking to a client who I've worked with for 2 years, it doesn't matter if I'm wearing a random, sports jumper. But if I'm speaking to a company that I'm speaking to for the first time, I'm going to stick on a shirt. I'm going to try and make myself look a little bit more presentable until we've broken down that barrier and built rapport. So yeah, just try and make sure that you're in something that is appropriate for the type of company that you're interviewing for, that's appropriate for a video interview in itself. Bright colors tend to be a no. Shirts with certain patterns, such as really fine stripes, I think they often show up quite badly on camera and often get a bit distorted. So I tend to advise people to go for more plain stuff than anything too bright and too distracting.
Cool, sounds good. So, and then the next thing is more, so once you've got your location sorted, you've got your outfit sorted, is sort of how you then present yourself. So we were saying earlier when Will and I were discussing this before the webinar, how important it is to maintain eye contact. And one thing Will actually taught me this morning was to move my camera and the webinar that I can see just underneath the screen. And before I say why this sounds sort of self-obsessed, I'll let Will explain it probably a bit better than I will, but it's to do along the lines of that we're naturally inclined of looking at ourselves, which I'm sure everyone can sometimes relate to.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's a big flaw in humans that the majority of us are a little bit self-obsessed when we're talking, especially on a video camera. We tend to be looking at ourselves to figure out, do we look good? Like, or it's not always because we want to look good. It's often that we don't want to look weird or we don't want to look bad. So what people often find is that, they'll be speaking to the corner of the camera and looking into the corner rather than looking directly into the camera lens. The only way to make eye contact in a video interview and in a webinar session is to look directly into the lens of the camera, which is almost an unnatural feeling because then you're not looking at a person, you're looking at like some Black Mirror-esque little hole in the screen. So what I did, or what a lot of people I know do, and what I advise people to do, on most video softwares, you can drag and drop kind of the function that shows each person on the video. You can drag and drop that and pretty much sit it directly under the lens of your webcam. Now, what this means is even if I start glancing at myself in the camera, it still looks like I'm looking more or less directly into the lens. So it means that I'm making eye contact with the interviewers. They feel I'm sort of relating to them, rather than if, for instance, if I move it down to the corner here, you can instantly see now that I'm looking at the bottom right hand corner rather than looking up here, and it makes a huge difference when someone's talking to you in this manner compared to talking to you in this manner. Body language, eye contact, these things are so important. You know, as you may have seen, and you can't see them all the time, but I'm, you know, a handsy person. When I'm talking and I'm elaborating, I move my hands around. Now, for some people that's useful. Some people, if they're fidgeting, which is a bit different, they'll want to keep it off camera. But body language is really important when you're showing enthusiasm, when you're showing interest, depending on the type of role that you're interviewing for. So take note on how the person that's interviewing you is acting. If they're slouched back in their chair, arms crossed, that's not a positive sign always. It means they could be disengaged. So you might want to adapt the way that you're sort of presenting yourself. If you're all hunched over, arms crossed as well, you know, it gives off a closed feel. So the more open you make your body language, the more open it makes the conversation, and the more rapport you're likely to build. Obviously, we've covered the eye contact, not eye camera. So yeah, avoid looking down. A big pet hate of mine when I'm conducting interviews is, you know, and make sure you have a notepad prepared. I'm trying to find a page that's not too messy. My handwriting's awful, but if someone has notes, they're pre-prepared notes. The temptation is that on a video interview, because you can't see what's in the screen around you, someone will just look down at their notes and they'll start reading off pre-prepared answers. Now, they might think that they're being slick, looking up every now and then, and that someone's not going to be able to tell, but it's evident when someone's regurgitating information to you. So you want to keep it as natural as possible, and you want to avoid looking down. If anything, it's more obvious on a video interview than when you're in person. Now, that's not to say that you can't have the odd look at your notes, as long as you're not reading off them and making it really obvious that you're not giving an organic answer. When it comes to posture, you want to be sat up straight in your chair throughout the interview. You know, everyone now is probably, you know, hunched over a laptop all day. We don't all have the right height of desks. We don't all have sort of a good computer setup. So it's really important that during your interview, you do try and focus on, you know, giving a good posture, getting your head in the headshot, and trying to maintain sort of a professional part. You know, as we said, body language, avoid crossing your arms, fidgeting. You know, I always advise people not to use their mobile phone and hold it in their hand. It's a pet hate of mine. If you're walking around the room and your phone's like this and you're talking and, you know, it's constantly moving, it's really distracting and off-putting. It doesn't give the best image. So if you're using your phone in an interview, find a spot where you can leave it upright at the right height, so you can just leave it be. You don't have to touch it, and that your hands are away from the screen. If you can, find a way so you're not constantly having to adjust it, move it around. But I'd say those are kind of like the main thing, to show that you're engaged with the conversation, to make sure you're not giving off closed body language, to look directly into the camera when you're talking to someone, and just make sure you're sort of giving them the feel that you're fully engaged and interested in what they're saying and interested in listening to the points of views they might have.
Cool. So I'll go on to top tip number 5. Henry, can I just check in with you on the time? Are we okay?
Yeah, I think we're good.
Cool, fab. So I'll try and speed things up slightly. There's not too long left. This is our second to last slide, and then we'll quickly just go over some of the opportunities that we have at Give a Grad A Go. But yeah, so I'll let Will take the reins again. There's other types of virtual interviews and how they differ. So there's two kind of sections. First one is the types of them, what is the pre-recorded video, and then just a couple of hints on how to prepare for that. Yeah, definitely.
So you're always going to find different companies will employ a different method. Some of them are very personalized depending on the type of interview process. Some of them, you know, if it's a grad scheme where they're receiving thousands of applications per year, they might actually go down sort of an automated process for the early stages. So this is where pre-recorded video interviews come in. Everyone has a story about where it's gone wrong. Everyone has a story about how much they might dislike them. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter whether you're a fan or not. They exist, they're there, and we have to do them. a pet hate of mine. I don't like them. I think they're, very inhuman, but at the same time, you can prepare for them and you can still do well, even if you feel uncomfortable doing them. Now, the main way, and it's the same for a virtual interview as a pre-recorded interview, it's preparing, doing your research, doing practice questions, ensuring that you have looked into the topic, looked into the company, looked into yourself, and thought about, the classic interview questions will still come up. What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? Why are you interested in this company, this job? Name me a time that you succeeded. Name me a time that you overcome failure. It's all about preparing. I hope I get this right, but there's the classic thing that's, is it not preparing is preparing to fail, or something like that?
Failing to prepare is to prepare to fail, I think.
That's the one. That's the one. Yeah. And, that is second to none when it comes to interviews of any kind, whether it's face-to-face, virtual, or whether it's pre-recorded. You have to be diligent. You have to prepare in detail. The best thing that you can do for a pre-recorded video interview is practice before you go on with written questions, and video yourself on your webcam or on your phone answering questions that you've read out, and that you're answering them without a human being present, because that's key, that you can articulate yourself to a camera, and that you can do that. Now, it's not important that you do it perfectly, because everyone knows that you only get 1 or 2 opportunities to do it. It's just about being able to deliver it in a concise manner. What actually helped me when I used to do them as a grad is I would get a post-it note or something, and I would just cover up my camera so that I couldn't see myself. And I found it less nerve-wracking to do that than if I was watching myself talking, rather than just talking directly into the camera. Obviously, when you're recording the interview, take it off, because otherwise they won't see you. So yeah, in terms of that, writing down notes for potential questions, really practicing what might come up. You do get sort of the odd opportunity to re-record them, but at the same time, making sure that you don't, even if you mess up, making sure you can kind of regain control and flow, because I think that's a skill that a lot of people will actually look for. Not whether you can nail it perfectly the first time, but how do you overcome sort of how do you overcome if you mess things up? How do you reignite the control, and how do you continue with the process and show that you can regain control? So I think that's the main thing, to practice, write down notes, ensure that you're ready, and just get comfortable speaking and asking questions to yourself rather than to another human being.
Exactly. So, and then on our final top tip, it's kind of what we were saying again earlier, but this slide has a few more links to the ways in which at Give A Grad A Go, even if you didn't want to come straight through us as your recruiters, we have so many tips. We've got our video channel, we've got our blogs. So either of these QR codes will give you loads of tips on how to ace killer interview questions. We've got a lot of information on our blogs, how to answer those tricky questions like what's your worst quality. Our recruitment experts in these blogs, and I'm sure Will would even be able to tell you now, what employers actually want you to say when they ask you what's your top thing, what's your worst thing. They don't actually want to hear that you get quite lazy sometimes. They want to hear that, oh, you might work too hard, and but yeah. Sure.
Yeah, it's always a difficult one, and there are things that people want to hear and things that people think they want to hear. Now, I hear loads of hiring managers hating that thing of, oh well, I care too much. Do people really care too much? Or I'm a perfectionist. Those are things that actually aren't necessarily good qualities to have. Now, a hiring manager for a startup might say, well, if someone's a perfectionist, does that mean that they're going to become so anal about a specific area that that's going to halt the rest of the work that they're doing? They're going to become tunnel visioned, and that's going to cause a problem. Sometimes it's just really important that someone, what's my top quality? I'm resilient. When things go wrong, I channel the negative energy into making the next steps that I do better. And that works really well for me in a sales environment, because when I don't close a deal, or when a candidate doesn't get the job, or you know, a role comes down or it's filled by a competitor, instead of just thinking, oh, you know, it's this person's fault, you know, I did everything right, I think, right, what's next? I need to make up this money elsewhere. I, you know, build up excitement in myself to say, right, we can do the next one better. So thinking about what positive attributes you have about yourself and how they relate to the job that you're doing, whether you're competitive, and, you know, I'll try and use non-sales based ones. It's the key qualities that probably stand out for myself. But if you're highly analytical, you know, if you're looking at certain roles, having someone who digs beneath the surface, having someone who asks intuitive questions is going to be useful. You know, everyone has a different strength. Everyone has different weaknesses. The weaknesses one, if someone asks you, what are your strengths and weaknesses? The best bit of advice I can give you is give your weakness first and then follow up with your strength. They'll always ask you for your strength first and then your weakness, but you always want to finish on the positive. And just switching it around works so wonderfully to interviewers. I don't know what it is about the psychology of it, but they just seem to be really, it's just a really well received aspect. But yeah, when it comes to strengths and weaknesses, it's something that you do want to think about. It shows self-reflection. If you don't have any weaknesses, then that's clearly a problem. I mean, I myself, a weakness that I usually say to people, look, you know, my spelling is terrible. I have dyslexia, but to make up for that, I use Grammarly, I use autocorrect, I use voice to text software, but having dyslexia actually means that I think about outside the box on so many processes and I improve things that other people miss. So when you give the weakness, tell them how you overcome that, what you've put in place to prevent it from being a weakness, and then how actually sometimes the things that you've done can lead to improvement. So it's all about how you frame the strengths and the weaknesses, what value that can add to the business. Nobody minds if you're not the best, if your numerate skills aren't great, as long as you're not going into accountancy. So, you know, my weakness, I'm not great with numbers, but I know how to use Excel, so I can get an automated process that will do all this analytical work for me if it comes up in my role. An employee is going to like hearing that because they know that you've found a way to overcome your weakness and that you've addressed it. So it's all just about how you frame your strengths and weaknesses. But yeah, there are loads of content on our website about the different types of interview questions that can come up. I think a lot of the time it's just making sure that you can appeal to them in an organic way. And that although you might have a pre-prepared answer, that you're still giving them the answer in a way that seems natural and organic.
Awesome. Yes, so just to follow on from what Will said, and we've got plenty of opportunities. I'll actually just forward to that slide quickly because I'm conscious that we might be running out of time. So before we ask you guys for any questions, I'll just quickly do a rundown on our current partnerships we've got going. So our first one is if you are looking for a job and looking to move in London, we have currently an offer with Lively, who are a house finding agency, but they're slightly different to usual estate agents in the sense that they build like a community. You get everything included with the house, including toilet roll. And
Netflix,
you get
toilet roll, so nice. Basically, it's like moving into an Airbnb where they give you everything there and you just pay like a flat price per year or per sort of contract, 6 months, and they just sort out everything. Your kitchen equipment is really cool, really nice, high end, really lovely, and they're just focused on giving you kind of like a community feel. They match you up with other working professionals. It might not necessarily be the one that you go into fresh out, but we see a lot of people who are kind of going into sort of, let's say, the consultancy, KPMG, NHS. They tend to quite like this area because it gives them the flexibility.
Yeah, it's really good. I really want to move into one of their houses. They are very nice. You can see them all online as well. If you like this webinar and you'd like to join another one, we've actually got a couple coming up that specialise in LinkedIn help, how to get the most out of your LinkedIn profile. There's one coming up in November, and we've also got one tomorrow if you're not too tired of webinars. We also have a content guest blog programme where we accept guest blogs by students, so it's written by students for students, and the email address for that is there. It's also on our website. We've also launched a new Facebook group, Go Graduate Network, which if you join, you will be entered in to chance to win £100. And we've also got the QR code to our YouTube channel. If I've gone through these too quickly and you want to find them again, they're plastered all over our Facebook, Instagram and our LinkedIn. And if you do have any questions about any of them, you can message pretty much anyone from Give A Grad A Go, but obviously me or Will would be here to answer your questions first and foremost. So following on from that, does anybody have any questions? We actually had a couple that got emailed in earlier by some people who weren't able to attend the webinar. And one of those is they were saying, which is the best platform to use? So when you are going for your interview, very occasionally this probably won't happen, but the employer might say to you, what would you prefer? So it could be Skype, Zoom, your phone, etc. But I'll pass it over to Will to advise on what the best one there would actually be.
Yeah, so I think like we covered earlier, a lot of the time it will be out of your hands. What I'd probably advise doing is just saying to the company, look, whichever software is your preferred one, I'm happy to use that. Mainly just because a lot of the time what you're used to using might not be what they use, and it's going to be more annoying for a client if they've got to create create a different account for every candidate. So it always looks good if you're happy to do what they want to do. So that would probably be my advice on that question.
Sounds good. And the other question we had was, especially when you're in a virtual interview, I know we spoke about wearing the right thing, being in the right location, having the right body language, etc. But what's the one thing that we should not do? And also, what would you say is the one thing that could make you really stand out? Sorry, I know that's kind of two questions in one.
No, that's all right. So in terms of what can make you stand out on a video interview, it's so hard because, what would make you stand out in a normal interview? I think it's really key that you're able to build rapport with the individuals that are conducting the interview. Make sure that when the call starts, you're smiley, hello, how are you? Have just the general loose conversation to introduce yourself and introduce them to the process. Nothing's worse than when you answer a phone, someone doesn't say hello, or they're just like, yeah, or, my pet hate is when I call up a candidate and I'm like, hi, it's Will here from Give A Grad A Go. How are you doing, Sam? And then Sam's suddenly like, I'm fine. And then already in my mind, I'm thinking, right, okay, well, this person hasn't said, how am I? That's just plain rude. Like, it doesn't cost much to show basic manners, but it also shows that you're a personal individual. You'll do well when you're speaking to other individuals and clients and whatnot. So certain roles, if a job spec says communication skills, but you're not going to say hello to the person or ask them how they are, that's going to be a red flag in a video interview, a face-to-face interview, or even in a recruitment call. So I think the key thing to doing well in an interview, firstly, being yourself. There's no point trying to fake and be someone you're not, but just making sure that you're extending common courtesy, and that you're building rapport, showing your personality, whether it's that you're sort of an introvert or extrovert. Just be yourself, but just make sure that you're extending common courtesy. Worst thing you can do actually is wear your pajamas. I had someone that wore their pajamas in a video interview. Don't know why they thought it was appropriate or acceptable, but yeah, that's probably the worst thing you can do. That, swear too much. I think sometimes there's an appropriate, if a client is loose with their tongue, you might be able to do it, but it's obviously mimicking them. I'd always advise people against it, but yeah, just trying to make sure that you're obviously being appropriate. So yeah, what questions do you guys have for myself and Katie? Feel free to pop it in either the main chat or the question and answer. So to be more articulate in an interview, question from Joannison, I believe that was. It's difficult. So I myself like to think that I've got quite auditory skills. I work in sales. I'm not the most academic, but what I am good is talking out my arse all day. That's probably why I do this job. So for me, I find being articulate isn't too difficult. But the main thing actually is not just being able to articulate yourself, but it's being able to listen to what other people are saying. And that actually allows you to articulate yourself better by truly listening and understanding the questions that are being asked by an interviewer or by a candidate, not giving the answer that you think they've asked, that you think that you want to give is the worst articulation for a question about articulation. But making sure that, you've listened, you've processed what they've said. A great tip for that, if someone says, what are your strengths and weaknesses, when you're answering back, instead of just saying, competitive and I'm loud, say my strengths are that I'm competitive, my weakness is that I'm loud. Make sure you repeat the question back to them. The more researched you are and the better understanding you have of your background, your experience, how your previous jobs relate to the role, the modules that you did at university, the better an understanding you have, the better you tend to be able to articulate yourself. If you're someone that feels that they struggle with, picking up on verbal cues or articulating, just practice, read through your CV, become really accustomed to your background and experience, and just make sure you know your stuff. If you've listed certain jobs on your CV, make sure you know what you've wrote on them. So many people put stuff and forget what they've written. So just make sure you're fully aware of sort of the information that you've wrote down.
Yeah, when I was searching for jobs last year, one of the things that I found, and I actually got this from looking at YouTube videos on job interview tips, is the STAR method. I don't know if you guys might have already heard of it, which is situation, task, action, result. And what I actually tried to do with that in interview questions, if Will said, name a time that you've really struggled, I would give the situation, I would explain the task it was, I would say what action I took, and then the result, which obviously you want it to be positive. But then at the end of that, I would bring it back to their exact question. And I added an A, which I called the application. So instead of star, I called it starer. And then I would talk about how that situation actually is applicable to their question and how I would apply those same things in the role. And also try and imagine and say to the company, I can predict that in this role, this is the kind of thing that might come up. This is how I would deal with it. So, for example, as Will was saying earlier, being resilient is a really good thing in sales. And he might be able to say, well, he might have said when he was in his interview at Give A Grad A Go, I'd be really good at working with Give A Grad A Go because I'm resilient, and in the future I can imagine that there will be a lot of instances where I might be rejected on the phone, where things don't go to plan, where our employers choose a different candidate, and then that will make the employer think that not only that you've really got an idea of what's going on in the job and that you've got a full understanding, because something that I always forgot to consider as well is that the employers want to keep you. It's not in their interest to have a low employee retention. They want to hire you and they want to have you for as long as possible. So knowing that you really understand the role that you'll be doing and that you know that that role is right for you as well, because it is a two-way thing. I think if you're able to articulate that, that's also really good and will look upon quite favourably in the interview process. Henry, are we still okay for time?
Yeah, I think we might have to wrap it up there because there'll be another session going on at 12, so people need to get onto that one. But yeah, thank you so much to Katie and Will for joining us. That was a fantastic insight into all things interviewing and getting your first jobs after uni. And as Katie said, you can see on the screen there, connect with them via that QR code. And yeah, on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, and their website, there's loads of content as well as some amazing jobs for you all to get stuck into. And yeah, thanks so much, Katie and Will, for joining us today. That was fantastic.
Well, thank you very much for having us.
No, it was a pleasure, Henry. Thank you very much, and thank you all for joining us as well. Pleasure to talk to you. Hopefully, I didn't waffle too much. I know my girlfriend says it's probably my weakness.
Not at all. Thanks so much, Will and Katie. And yeah, take care.
Thank you very much. And if anyone has any questions at all, you know where we'll be. And yeah, we're always on hand to answer anything. So yeah, get in touch with us.
Cheers, guys. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Henry. Thanks, everyone.